"Don't run away, you coward." The voice boomed across the crowded gym floor, cutting through the heavy clanking of iron and bass-heavy music. Before I could even turn around, a massive shadow fell over me, cornering me tightly against the steel weight rack. It was Brock, the local gym bully, backed by his usual smirking crew. To him, I was just a quiet, unassuming girl in an oversized hoodie who didn't belong in his corner of the gym. His friends laughed, mocking that I was easy prey who couldn't even defend myself. I didn't flinch. I calmly sat on the bench, tightening my wrist wraps in absolute silence. They thought they had backed a weak victim into a corner. What Brock didn't know was that for the past 6 years, I had been the head close-quarters combatives instructor for the U.S. Army Special Forces. My name is Talone Miller. At 28 years old, I had spent the better part of the last decade living in rigid operational environments where every second was calculated and every movement had a purpose. After completing my active military service, I transitioned into private defensive consulting, trading forward operating bases for a quiet apartment in the city. I wasn't looking for attention or validation. I just needed a structured routine to maintain my conditioning and keep old training habits sharp. That was how I ended up at Titan Elite Gym, a massive commercial facility filled with shiny chrome machines, pounding electronic music, and an overwhelming amount of ego. I deliberately kept my profile invisible. I wore faded, oversized gray hoodies, kept my wired headphones firmly in my ears, and stayed off to the side, focusing on mobility drills and high-repetition functional work. It didn't take long to notice the hierarchy on the main floor. The place was dominated by Brock Reynolds, a 6'3" competitive lifter who carried himself like he owned the deed to the building. Brock traveled with a loud entourage of 3 followers, monopolizing the best equipment and routinely harassing newer members out of their training zones. They used subtle intimidation, hovering too close, dropping heavy barbells deliberately, and making mocking comments under their breath until people gave up and walked away. I watched it happen for 2 weeks, staying silent, focusing on my sets, and letting them believe I was just another timid stranger trying not to be noticed. On a humid Tuesday evening, the gym was packed wall to wall. I had claimed one of the open power racks in the corner, setting up my bar for a series of explosive deadlifts and overhead presses. I had already completed my warm-up sets, methodically loading the plates, when the heavy thud of weight plates dropping echoed right beside me. I looked up to see Brock and his 3 regulars crowding the immediate platform space. Brock stood barely 3 feet away, his arms crossed over his chest, projecting an obvious posture of physical domination. He looked at the plates on my barbell and let out a dry, theatrical chuckle. "Hey, sweetheart," he called out, loud enough for half the free weight section to hear. "You've been tying up this rack for 10 minutes doing warm-ups. Why don't you take your little cardio routine over to the stretching mats? Real lifters have actual work to get done today." His friends smirked, shifting their weight and leaning against the adjoining pillars to box me into the space. In the military, rule number 1 of operational de-escalation is absolute emotional detachment. You never match an amateur's loud aggression with reckless panic. I kept my breathing steady, wiped down my hands with a towel, and met his eyes without blinking. "I have 2 working sets left," I replied, keeping my tone entirely even, flat, and professional. "It will take me exactly 4 minutes. Then the rack is yours." Brock let out an exaggerated groan, rolling his eyes dramatically for his audience. "4 minutes is 4 minutes too long, kid. Move your gear or I'll move it for you." He mistook my steady composure for paralyzing fear, assuming that a lack of shouting meant immediate submission. He couldn't have been more mistaken. Instead of rushing or arguing, I methodically unloaded the plates, racked the barbell, and picked up my water bottle. I decided to transition to the dumbbell area to finish my grip and endurance work. But Brock wasn't satisfied with simply taking the equipment. He wanted an audience, a spectacle, and an absolute demonstration of his dominance. As I walked down the narrow rubberized walkway toward the exit, Brock intentionally cut across my path, planting his heavy combat boots directly in front of me. His 2 friends immediately fanned out to the sides, effectively boxing me in against the heavy steel dumbbell racks. The metal bars behind me offered no retreat. The background chatter across the gym began to die down. People on the treadmills stopped running, and guys mid-set let their weights settle to the floor. The front desk staff clearly saw what was happening, but they hesitated, looking away nervously. Brock brought substantial membership revenue and personal training clients to the facility, granting him an unspoken pass to push people around. "You had an attitude back there," Brock said, stepping in close enough that I could smell his strong pre-workout drink. "You think you can just ignore people when they give you advice? You need to learn how respect works around here." His crew chuckled, crossing their arms to seal off any escape route. I remained stationary, adjusting my wrist wraps in calculated silence. My internal tactical clock immediately initiated threat assessment. Distance 60 centimeters. Balance forward heavy on his right heel. Intent physical intimidation with impending battery. "Step back, Brock," I said, my voice low, clear, and perfectly steady. "I am giving you a direct warning. Step back and let me pass." His eyes flashed with sudden anger. "Or what, little girl? You're going to make me?" Brock scoffed, his face tightening with genuine malice as he reached out with his heavy right hand, aiming straight for my collar to shove me against the steel rack. In hand-to-hand combat, aggression without precision is simply wasted momentum. The exact millisecond his fingers made contact with the fabric of my hoodie, my training took over. I didn't step back. I pivoted inside his reach, rotating my hips to bypass his forward mass entirely. With my left hand, I snared his wrist, pinning his thumb against his forearm, while my right palm drove upward into the hinge of his elbow. It was a standard textbook standing joint lock. The exact non-lethal compliance hold I had drilled into hundreds of Special Forces candidates at Fort Liberty. Using his own aggressive forward momentum against him, I torqued the angle 4 degrees downward. Physics did the rest. Brock gasped as his center of gravity completely dissolved. Before his friends could even register the movement, Brock's massive 240-pound frame was forced downward, his knees hitting the rubber mat with a dull thud. His right arm was pinned securely behind his back, isolated in a shoulder lock that allowed zero leverage to fight back without risking a clean dislocation. I didn't throw a single strike. I didn't raise my voice. I simply kept controlled, calculated pressure on the joint, holding him firmly immobilized on the floor. "Don't move," I stated quietly into his ear. "Every single ounce of resistance you exert right now will only work against your own shoulder." The gym fell into an eerie, suffocating silence. The music kept playing overhead, but across the entire floor, not a single person moved. His two friends stood frozen in utter disbelief, their mouths slightly open, terrified to step forward. Brock, trembling and completely red-faced, squeezed his eyes shut, his tough guy bravado entirely shattered. Okay. Brock choked out, tapping the rubber floor with his free hand. "Let go. Please just let go." The heavy double doors near the lobby swung open and Marcus, the general manager, came sprinting across the floor, flanked by 2 building security guards. "What is going on here?" Marcus yelled, pushing through the crowd. "Break it up right now." "Brock, what did you do?" I maintained constant control for 2 more seconds before releasing the tension on Brock's arm, stepping backwards smoothly into a neutral defensive stance. Brock scrambled frantically to his feet, clutching his right shoulder and panting, his face pale and covered in cold sweat. "She attacked me," Brock stammered, backing toward his friends. "She's insane. She jumped me out of nowhere." Before the manager could respond, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a military fade stepped out from the cable machine row. It was Colonel David Harris, a senior regional liaison and longtime gym member. His eyes locked onto me, wide with immediate recognition. "Stand down, son." Colonel Harris's deep voice resonated across the floor, silencing Brock instantly. The colonel stepped forward, snapping to attention and giving me a crisp, formal nod. "Captain Miller. I didn't realize you were training in this sector." Brock blinked, totally lost. "Captain? Who the hell is this?" Colonel Harris turned his cold gaze toward Brock and the manager. "This is Talone Miller. For the past 6 years, she was the lead close-quarters combatives instructor for the U.S. Army 1st Special Forces Command. She literally wrote the tactical curriculum that trained active-duty Green Berets in lethal and non-lethal defense." A collective gasp swept through the onlookers. Brock's friends took 2 hurried steps backward, completely distancing themselves from him. I reached calmly into my gym bag, pulled out my Department of Defense credentials alongside my state defensive consulting license, and handed them directly to Marcus. "Every camera in this gym will confirm I retreated, gave verbal warnings, and used strictly non-lethal joint control in direct response to physical battery," I said calmly. "Check the tapes." Marcus took the credentials with trembling hands, quickly gesturing toward the administration office. Within 10 minutes, Marcus, Colonel Harris, and the head of security were crowded around the surveillance monitors, reviewing the high-definition overhead footage from 3 separate angles. The video told an indisputable story. It clearly captured Brock initiating the hostile pursuit, cornering me against the dumbbell rack, and ignoring my repeated verbal warnings to step away. It showed his friends deliberately blocking the walkway. Most damning of all, the zoom camera captured Brock lunging forward and gripping my collar, followed by my single measured joint lock that neutralized the threat in less than 1 second without throwing a punch. When the screen went dark, Marcus let out a long, heavy breath. He turned to the security team and gave immediate orders. Brock's membership was revoked on the spot with a permanent lifetime ban, and his 2 enablers were issued immediate 90-day suspensions pending further review. As word spread across the gym floor, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Several newer members and female lifters stepped forward, finally voicing months of documented complaints about Brock's aggressive territory grabbing and intimidation tactics that staff had previously overlooked. Marcus walked back out to the main lobby where I was finishing my cool-down stretch. He handed back my identification credentials with a look of profound apology and genuine respect. "Captain Miller, I cannot apologize enough for what happened today," Marcus said sincerely. "You handled an escalating threat with more discipline and restraint than anyone I've ever seen. In fact, our regional director would like to extend an offer. We want you to conduct a defensive tactics and situational awareness seminar for our staff and members." I accepted the apology, collected my gear, and zipped up my gym bag. True capability never needs to boast, intimidate, or demand center stage. Throughout my career in the military, the most dangerous operators I ever trained were always the quietest professionals in the room. They understood that real strength isn't measured by how loud you can shout or how much space you can claim through fear. It's defined by complete mastery, discipline, and emotional control under pressure. Titan Elite Gym transformed over the weeks that followed. With the toxic posturing gone, the floor became a welcoming, focused environment where people trained hard and supported one another without fear of intimidation. My weekend defensive workshop filled up instantly, teaching everyday civilians the fundamentals of de-escalation, posture, and spatial awareness. As for Brock, rumors circulated that he tried transferring to other facilities across town, but word of the incident, and his complete unraveling on camera, had already spread throughout the local fitness community. I still train at the same corner rack every morning at dawn. Keep my headphones on, my hoodie up, and my focus sharp. You never truly know the history of the person standing quietly beside you, and true power always speaks for itself.